Today, we turn to a political shift that could redefine the trajectory of the European state, that has for more than a decade sat at the centre of debates and democracy, sovereignty, and even the limits of liberal democracy. Now, Hungary has just voted to bring an end to Viktor Orbán's 16-year rule, with a new party securing a constitutional majority and preparing to take office. I'm Dominic Bowen, and I'm host of the International Risk Podcast, where we explore the risks that are shaping our world and the forces that are driving global change. Our guest today is Zsuzsanna Szelényi. She's a foreign policy specialist. She's a former member of the Parliament of Hungary, and she's the program director at the CU Democracy Institute. And I'm really excited about the conversation with Zsuzsanna today. Zsuzsanna, welcome to the International Risk Podcast.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
So, whereabouts in the world do we find you today?
Well, this is a spectacular period of Hungary's history in these days. I would say history because that's how the feeling is. There was such a long time of this apolitical period, I would say, in Hungary when only a few people dared or wanted to speak up, and apolitical was a kind of way of hiding. Now it's a complete new opening. So I think a lot of people, if in a certain way, everyone in Hungary should reset their life today. Maybe not in the everyday experience, but how this new word in Hungary will impact their own life. I think basically everyone is thinking of sort of people who are more in a political or in the public space. They really have to figure out not just whether they want to participate in this, but how their institutions, how are their future perspectives are now changing in the new situation.
It's a very new situation, and I know that caused you to have to go back to your book, Tainted Democracy, and update parts of it. Do you want to tell us about that? How did you decide how much needed to be updated with the new change, which I think caught a lot of people by surprise?
I finished my book at the previous election in 2022 with a very devastating result when Viktor Orbán gained his fourth majority, constitutional majority. So it was an incredibly depressive period. So obviously, the book motivated me, or the thing what is motivated me to write this book was my political experience. I was in Hungarian politics in the 1990s as a member of Fidesz party, and then for 6 years, and then later I came back in 2012 to 2018. So another period of Hungarian history I covered from opposition, and I thought I have something to say about not just in Hungary, but how her bird has changed over these 30 years. So now the reason why my book needed to be updated is that approximately in the last 2 years, Hungary has started to change. We saw these changes with the new political figures coming to the scene. Also, young people speaking up more openly. There were specifically big youth events, concerts, pop concerts, when young people, we saw them that they become political. They started to say slogans that Russians go home and dirty Fidesz and this kind of thing. So negative comments. So the young people started to speak up against the system publicly, well, though in big numbers. But then suddenly things have changed, and a new opposition party or the new opposition leader turned out 2 years ago, and he was very successful to create a new party within a couple of months and even run at the European election and take 30% of the votes. So I think as from that time, it was clear that something is dramatically changed. But until the election day, basically we didn't know whether this could be enough to defeat Viktor Orbán, because Hungary was changed, transformed so deeply in the last 16 years, and Orbán's political elite, party elite, accumulated so incredible power, not just by law, but also informal power and financial power, that it was just not obvious that the turn can be changed. So that was really probably 2 weeks or 2, 3 weeks before the elections, it was absolutely a big question whether this could happen.
And so now that you've had time to reflect on the election and what happened, and obviously there's been a lot of discussion within Hungary and ultimately around the world, what do you think actually broke Viktor Orban's system? I mean, there was a very clear shift in the electoral system, and these things are rarely just happen overnight, though. So what, in your view, actually caused things to change? Was it about political rejection, or was it a structural shift within Hungarian society? What do you think led to this dramatic change?
So there are obviously some structural issues behind the situation, and also there are something which just came up during the campaign, the electoral campaign. So the structural things, first of all, which is kind of almost evident, that Orban's state party or state party. Okay, so Orban's state party or party state. We can use both ways. Really abused this power, not just in a constitutional manner, but also in terms of economic management. So Orban used the unorthodox economy as a kind of leading way how he managed the economic governance. But practically, it turned out over the years that this was enabling a certain client network to become incredibly rich from state resources by basically corruption, a massive systemic corruption. And a lot of resources started to miss from the Hungarian economy, and there was a lot of investment not happening. So also it was bad and it was lacking from the government services, but it was also bad for the economy. So Hungary's economy started to be less competitive, less productive, and we faced a significant economic crisis 23, 24. But we cannot say that this was the only thing. There was another bigger kind of structural thing, and this is that, as I already pointed, that the completely new generation grew up during this period of time. This new generation is a different generation because it was born already into the EU. It's all very flexible. It's not only the ones who are studying abroad, however, there are many, but basically for them, this issue that the Hungarian government went against all the time, the European Union and the EU decisions, it was so incredibly troubling that they really felt that this is not their government. So the young people, a new generation, and we know from the election result that 90% of people under 35 voted for the opposition. So this is massive. And also the other generations, there were a majority who turned away from Orban. So I think this generation shift also demonstrated that this government did not go on the right way because Hungarians did not follow them.
And I think they're all very, very valid points. And I'd like to pick up on what you talked about. Viktor Orban and the Orban system and the structures that he built around him, and those that benefited from his regime. 16 years is a long time to build your specific type of government, and it takes a lot longer sometimes to pull these strings apart. I've had a lot of very interesting conversations over dinners and lunches with people in Ukraine about what it was like, older Ukrainians who grew up under the Soviet Union's rule. And then as they started to get independence in the 90s and then in the early 2000s and then their independence in 2014, and how that continued again to 2022 and then the post 2022 period. And each time they were able to shed more and more of the Russian control and the Russian led corruption on their systems. But it took decades. It wasn't something they could just switch off in the early 90s. And it's been really interesting for me to learn and understand that. And so I'd love to hear from you about the specific types of government and governance that Viktor Orban has created, and what elements you think might be so deeply embedded or so resistant to change that the new government's going to take time and going to have difficulty unraveling.
So one of the things Orban based his power was the simplest constitutional majority he had. So he only received 50% of the voters over every 4 years, but because of this very, very bad and majoritarian electoral system we had since the regime change, it always supported the winner. And Orban, Orban's party changed, I think, for like more than 30 times the electoral rule since 2010. So they always adjusted the electoral system for their own benefit. So basically, they could do everything legally, formally legal. Whatever decision they made, it was legal. They changed the constitution. They changed the constitutions 15 times ever since they changed it in 2011. So this was an incredible power. The other thing is that Orban probably understood that in post-communist societies, and Hungary obviously was or is one of them, the role of the state spectacularly important for citizens. And the whole idea of individualism and taking care of ourselves, kind of responsibility for our own future, was not so embedded. So he could create this political persona of being the strong man, the kind of daddy of everyone who was taking care. It came through the policies Orban's government represented. And for for many years, it was actually pretty successful. We have to change, probably rethink the Hungarian constitutional environment in order to reconstruct a pluralistic political environment.
And I think that point about the constitutional majority is really important, and I think it's going to be fundamental to how the new system is shaped. I think it continues to raise questions about how much restraint the new government might hold and legitimacy in the long term. So, what would be your recommendation to the political parties and our leaders of the new system in Hungary about how they should use their power responsibly, and what are the risks that we should all be monitoring to make sure that they don't fall down the same slope that Viktor Orban left for them?
So before I answered your question, we should have a look at how Orban's system looks like, because it was a very conscious enterprise. So when Orban came to power in 2010, he knew exactly what he wanted. He wanted to demolish liberal democracy in Hungary. What does this mean, anti-liberal? If we see what are the basic tenets of liberal democracy, then they are the following: neutrality of the state, separation of powers, and nurturing of a pluralist cultural and political system. So this is all the three issues that Orban, from the first day, started to change. And he started to concentrate power and centralize everything. The way how he did it was really innovative and extraordinary. So he made Orban's government and parliamentary majority kept the democratic institutional structure intact. But they basically, because they had this constitutional majority, within 2-3 years, they changed every position at the state institutions, and they put their own people there. And when we say own people, means basically from the party, very partisan people. The first president was a kind of friend of Orban. The Constitution Court lawyers went to the same school, coming all from Fidesz. The state audit office, the competition office, the public prosecutor, everyone came from hardcore Fidesz loyalists. And then basically the neutrality of state ceased to exist in Hungary. And the separation of power ceased to exist in Hungary. So the neutrality also ceased because the state apparatus, the various ministries, started to operate in partisan way. So this is also true for corruption. So basically, they started exclude a whole number of business sector from state tenders. This is what we call corruption. But basically, it not only excluded a lot of actors, and they didn't finance media and all kind of other entities, but they basically started to support a certain partisan media, a certain group of business people who become incredibly rich over the years. So in 2018, more than 500 media outlets were centralized into one media holding company and started to be edited centrally. So this is something no one in Europe can imagine, because that created this incredible propaganda environment that basically Hungarians heard same messages targeted, segmented through public posters and television and social media by influencers. It was a huge, incredible system. It all should be changed. So, what are the major tasks of the new government? So, we have to make Hungary a liberal democracy again. But this cannot be like it was before because it did not work out. As I said, we inherited a constitutional system and an election system from 1989. So we inherited a constitutional system since 1989, which was not working very well. So we have to do something new. Then obviously there is an incredible amount of money which was stolen by these Orbán loyalist elites. We speak about, let's say, 30% of the banking system is now in the hand of people who are close to Orbán's circles. It's enormous. They have wealth in strategic industry like energy, telecom companies. So we're not speaking about tiny little bits of the Hungarian economy. We speak about strategic industries, and these are at the moment controlled by people who are close to Viktor Orbán. So this is a huge challenge.
And I'd love to pick up on that because I know that Viktor Orban's father and his younger brother are two of the wealthiest business people in Hungary. They're primarily involved in the mining and construction sectors. But I also know that Viktor Orban's oldest daughter, Rahel, and her husband are also amongst some of Hungary's richest individuals. Now, they fled or immigrated to the US last year. But that was on the back of European anti-fraud investigations on them about several occasions where there was irregularities and conflict of interests about state tenders. The EU's anti-fraud investigation office forwarded these recommendations to the Hungarian authorities and called for European Union funds to be returned. But in Hungary, these proceedings were shelved and paused. But more recently, there's been signs of movement amongst Viktor Orban's associates too. I understand that a few days ago, the new Hungarian Prime Minister, Peter Magyar, accused Orban's cronies of transferring billions to foreign bank accounts in order to evade anti-corruption investigations and planned attempts to recover assets. I wonder how much of this do you see as being credible? Is there really that significant a problem with corruption in Hungary today?
When we speak about corruption a la Orbán, it's a very interesting thing because well, I know Orbán from 1988, so and I was member of Fidesz party until 1994, and one reason why I left, and actually many others, was how Orbán, when he took over the party leadership in 1993, turned out to use party resources. Basically, he started to use party resources to Viktor Orbán, when he became the president, the chairperson of Fidesz party in 93, he started to, with very few people, to outsource party money into private companies, make money in lucrative businesses like luxury car companies and renting companies. And well, back then it seemed to be a big thing. And then turn back money for the party, but they started to accumulate this profit on their own company's bank account. And these companies were the ones that started to buy media after 1995, media outlets, advertising company, because Orbán's idea was long ago that if he is not rich, he cannot control politics. So he always did these things together. So he did not steal money for his own pockets, but he stole it through companies, through other actors, through a lot of middlemen in order to exercise power. And this kind of cycle, because obviously the money always came from state resources. These people were never business people before. They become business people by this kind of central state money. To eliminate this, it will be a huge task. And one reason is that the money is under the name of all kind of different people. As you mentioned, there are many of Orban's own family who become enriched in the previous 15 years. And of course, this started to bother people a lot at some point. But there are much bigger wealth in the name under other people. And what do we mean by that? This also means that asset management companies whose owners we don't even know. So the international financial rules actually support Orban's cronies to hide money, significant volume, and taking this back for public use for the state resources, it will be a huge challenge because it should be done legally. And not just we don't know a lot of information, but it should be done through in a good way. And that's we come to another important question: how to re-democratization of the Hungarian constitutional environment can happen. Because what we have now is that we do have a new party with supermajority, with constitutional majority leading in parliament. So we lost Fidesz, and now we have something new, but it looks very much the same. It was a very important concerns of Péter Magyar to bring in new politicians who have never exercised or never participated in politics in a visible, formal way before. So this is a lot of new people, and they should behave in a way which is not exampled by the previous 15 years. And TISA party should also demonstrate that, okay, they do have constitutional power, but they will not abuse this. Because, of course, constitutional power in one party's hand is always a danger. We know it, we saw it, we experienced it. So obviously, it's a big temptation for them as well, right? But they cannot do, and I hope that this is what Hungarians learned in the last many years, that this is not an ideal situation. If we want to pluralize the Hungarian society and the Hungarian political arena, then actually the new power should refrain itself from using everything what is actually given for them. So that will be a kind of fascinating experience in the future.
I think it really will be. But Zsuzsanna, I wonder, Hungary's relationship with the European Union has often been a defining feature of the past decade, and it hasn't been a positive defining feature. It's been this thorn in the side of the European Union. But how does this new political shift change that position within the EU, and what are the risks and what are the opportunities of this change?
So there are risks and opportunities for both, for us Hungarians and for European partners. So for us, I think it was absolutely clear by the result and how this campaign was happening and how people behaved in Hungary that this being European is something people didn't want to give up. And the continuation of Orbán's regime threatened us to be completely sidelined within the EU or even pushed out of it. I think the new government is aware of this. So this was also their own slogan, and they understood what Hungarians wanted. So they will be a more predictable and collegial partner within the EU than what Orbán presented since his first day. And they obviously try to discuss everything, but in a normal European way. So that is, I think that's going to happen. But the risks are there that the Fidesz party has not disappeared. They are the opposition, the new opposition in Hungarian parliament. They have 20-something percent of the votes. And we also have a far right party sitting in the Hungarian parliament. So basically, the new leading party will have a significant opposition from two parties which are illiberal parties, which are radical right-wing. They will need to negotiate with them if they want to behave in a democratic way. They will be under pressure from ideological perspective, and they will also criticize them in terms of their Europe policies. And other things from European perspective. I mean, this is one thing that they will probably happy to support Hungary to rebuild some kind of distrust or rebuild trust. So the European partners, I suppose, will be open to rebuild trust with Hungary and the Hungarian government. But I think Europeans can learn more than that out of the situations, because what actually happened in Hungary and what shows far beyond Hungary's importance is that Hungary demonstrated that after 16 years of massive, robust, illiberal power, it is possible to win by elections. And liberalism is actually not over. And I think in the last couple of years, since European countries witnessed, and also in the US, that the radical illiberal forces started to come to power or strengthened their existence in politics in Europe. I mean, that's a significant presence in the European Parliament and practically in all of our countries. There was a kind of new mindset that, okay, this is a new reality. We have to learn how to live together with the far right. So I think that we don't necessarily have to do this. And there is a new momentum for broader European thinking that we don't have to give up the real liberal democratic nature of the European political system. We have to think about how to make it better, because obviously it did not work very well. Otherwise, there would not be this kind of vacuum which were filled by radical parties. So there were a lot of problems in European politics, but it's not over. It doesn't mean that we have to forget it.
And if we continue looking outside of Hungary, what does this mean for Hungary and Europe's relationship with Russia now that Viktor Orbán has been removed from office?
So I think the Russia issue is going to remain a big case for Europe. It was important to see how Russians started or tried to influence the Hungarian elections, not just in Hungary, but there were similar experiences in other countries recently. So we are aware that there is a massive interest on Russia's side to confuse European politics. I think this is their major aim. In Hungary, it was happening through Orbán's government. So the Hungarian government did not push back any of the Russian efforts. It could not do that. But basically, I think this is something where there will be massive and significant changes, because it is a big threat for Hungary's own sovereignty. So Orbán, he was responsible for losing a lot of Hungary's sovereignty because Russian intervention was so obviously happening through government action. I think a new Hungarian government will be a partner to look at Europe's security from a more careful perspective, and Russia politics will definitely change in Hungary.
Excellent. Well, that's some very positive news. And maybe just in the last 30 seconds, if you could tell us, when you look around the world, when you look at all the things that are going on in the world today, what are the international risks that concern you the most?
I am a foreign policy specialist, so this is where the easiest for me to look around. My concern is that the international environment become very, very unpredictable, and I think this is a big issue and big concern for Europe.
Well, Zsuzsanna, thank you very much for coming on the International Risk Podcast today. That was a great conversation with Zsuzsanna Szelényi. She's the author of Tainted Democracy, and that was a great conversation and really getting more insight from a former politician and foreign policy specialist about what the new government has in store for them, the international risks and the opportunities in Hungary. Today's episode was produced and coordinated by Katerina Mazzucchelli. I'm Dominic Bowen, your host. Thanks very much for listening. We'll speak again in the next couple of days.